What's going on, guys? SasDood here. You can just call me Sas. I hope everyone is having a super awesome day. Today we have what I like to call a new series, Dude Talk, and that's going to just be me talking about things that I find interesting or topics that I find interesting in my life and in, the media that I consume or in art or things like that. And today's Dude Talk is on sword and sorcery character naming conventions and some of their design tropes. And I'll have pictures of what I'm saying right next to my face so you can know what I'm talking about. It'll be a little bit more edited instead of me just talking at the camera, right? So when we look at some male names for uh, for male characters in the sword and sorcery genre, we have names such as Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, Solomon Kane the Puritan, Hawk the Slayer, Bran MacMorn, Cole the Conqueror, Elric Melniboné, I think is how you say that. Sorry if I butchered it. Deathstalker and Imaro. So those are just a couple of examples. And from watching a lot of films and watching and reading a lot of books, is that all of these names start and usually end with a harsh ending and a starting sound, right? It's very abrupt and it's usually followed by some sort of affix describing what they are, right? So for example, we have Conan, the barbarian, Conan the king, right? Conan the conqueror, etc., etc. It's a very simple naming convention, and so I was thinking, why is it this way? Well, it's easy to remember as sword and sorcery is my favorite type of fantasy. It is low fantasy. It is not high fantasy. Most characters have easy to remember names. They're short, they're simple, they're very easy to say, they're very short to say, and most of these names are very harsh sounding, very barbarian like, very heroic like, right? And when it comes to the topic of affixes, it usually is whatever they're named after or the feats of strength, right? So usually they're short and descriptive, such as Red Sonja, the she devil with a sword, which that name does both, right? Her name both describes her flaming red, majestic, beautiful hair and has her actual name. So her hair is red and her name is Sonja. And it tells of her prowess with a sword and how devil like she fights and how devil like she kills, right? Conan probably holds the most titles for like a barbarian name or affixes for a name. Uh, and usually that's a post Robert E. Howard thing, right? You have pastiches with Robert Jordan and LeCamp, where you have Conan, such as the freebooter, destroyer, barbarian, thief, Conan the destroyer the movie, Conan the thief, Conan the king, things like that, right? Short and simple, easy to remember. Hawk the Slayer, Solomon Kane the Puritan, things like that. They're nice, short, simple, easy to remember, and it really boils down the character to their most simplest ideas, even if these characters are more than what they appear, as is the case with Conan. Now, when it comes to female names, there's not really a plethora of female protagonists like we see with male protagonists because the sword and sorcery genre is mainly a male power fantasy, right? Uh, but there are a few that I know and a lot that I do not know that I wish to know more of. So sorry for my ignorance for some of these, but some of these are Red Sonja, Valeria, Bellet, Sheena, Tamara from the Conan reboot with Jason Momoa, I believe. Xena Warrior Princess, Corella from Robert Jordan's pastiches and from the Conan TV show. You have Amathea from Barbarian Queen. You have Hundra, etc. And as we established, the male characters usually have a short, harsh sounding name, but a lot of females in the genre usually have softer sounding names. A lot of names end with the ah sound or an I or an E sound. The harsher sounding endings of female names, they usually end with like a T or maybe a C or a K, but they usually start with a softer sounding beginning letter, such as a V or a B, like with Valeria, Bellet, Sheena, right? You have the sh sound. You have Tamara. You have Xena, right? These are all like soft starting names. And if they do start with like a harsher sounding letter or sound, it usually ends with the more softer sounding A, right? With male characters, right, you have Conan, right, with the C or a K. You have Solomon Kane, right? You have Hawk, the Slayer, things like that. That's kind of the process that I'm trying to demonstrate to you guys, right? And I've noticed this quite frequently when I was trying to research names for my Conan Exile characters, my two black African Conan Exile characters, right? And I've underestimated how long it takes to find a name for them. And I don't even know if I'll name them, but I've noticed this trend for male and female names, not just for uh, generic sounding names, right, that you get from like a word generator or from like ChatGPT or things like that, but for African or European names, right? And the same rule for feminine sounding names is quite common, right? And I think the way this convention works is because it's like a duality, right? Uh, it's the duality of a female barbarian or woman warrior in a low fantasy setting. We have a strong woman warrior, female warrior, while at the same time having a softer sounding name, right? And that kind of plays into that duality and into that stereotype. And what also plays into this stereotype is the costume designs for the stereotypical roles for both. Usually, when we talk about male sword and sorcery protagonists or barbarians, right, they're wearing some sort of loincloth. Sometimes it's referred to as like a diaper because it kind of looks like a diaper because they just have like a hide cloth and then they have maybe some sort of fur overlaying it, and they're not wearing usually anything underneath. I don't think they would. I don't know how there would be space for, underwear, because that's essentially what their underwear is. um they wear some sort of headband with stones inside it, or they wear like a thin headband or just some sort of like head accessory. It could be like a helmet or things like that, right? On their arms they have like studded wrists, or they have like a wristband of some sort. It's fur, it's got stones in it, it's studded, it's embedded, things like that. uh I don't recall any of them wearing like gloves of any kind. Maybe the fancier sword and sorcery characters have them. I can't recall if Solomon Kane wears any gloves. Maybe he does in some of the comic designs. I don't know anything about the comics. But from how it's described in like the Robert E. Howard books, I don't think he wears any type of gloves. But I'm pretty sure he's been with gloves at some point or another. When it comes to like their like arms, like their muscles, right? They usually wear some sort of like armband, right? That kind of compresses the muscle or the skin. So when they flex, right, the armband kind of expands and retracts in unison with their muscles, and it really portray. I like the armbands because it really shows off their muscle, right? If they do wear some sort of like, usually they're just bare chested, right? Because they're men, right? We don't have the same thing with female, right? We're not gonna see a lot of females being bare chested. So with the men, they're usually bare chested, full muscles, right? It's the biggest contrast ever. But if they do wear something, it's usually just sort of simple shirt, or they have some sort of like wolf skin on. If you think of like maybe Conan the Barbarian from the 1982 film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that's what I'm thinking. And tying into that, a side tangent, I think that's why the first Conan the Barbarian film was so successful in its portrayal of Conan by Arnold Schwarzenegger and the choices of John Milius. And most sword and sorcery films that I've seen, the the protagonist and the side characters, they don't really change their attire. and there's not really a moving forward timeline. Usually, if they do skip time, it's usually when they're a kid to an adult or whatever, like in Hawk the Slayer. But their attire doesn't really change all that much. And when you look at the 1982 film of Conan the Barbarian, you see Conan changes hairstyles a lot, and he changes his attire quite a lot. When he was a kid, he wore a lot of furs and hide and such because it's cold out when he's in his village with his parents. And when he's enslaved and he's forced to put on the Wheel of Pain, as he grows up, he only wears pants, right? And his hair is grown all the way down, right? It's not just down to his shoulders, and later in the film it's kind of down here, but it's not as long as it is down here, right? It's basically to the middle of his back when he's enslaved because, he's enslaved. He's a slave. He's forced to push the Wheel of Pain. But when he's a pit fighter, he wears studded armor, he wears studded wrists, he wears arm bands and helmets and things like that. Uh, and at that point, when he's a pit fighter, his hair is also shorter, I think. At least from the footage I've seen when I reviewed it. His hair isn't as long when he was a slave, but it's like not as short to, with that square cut mane that Conan normally has. It's kind of like a little bit long, it's a little bit in between. But after he gets the Atlantean sword, right, he's wearing a lot of fur hides to keep warm, and when he's in the city, he wears regular pants and shirts and things like that. And to kind of bring home this point, there's a lot of visually consistent designs and different attire to show the progress of time and him as a fully fledged, red-blooded human. He's not just a caricature. He's not just a barbarian. He's Conan the Barbarian. He's Conan the Thief. He's Conan the Conqueror, right? He's a real living human being in this film, and it really makes you believe that he could have existed at one point in time, maybe somewhere in our human past, right? In the land of Hyboria, right? Now, a little bit of a little getting on to the main point, we have like the women characters, and I don't have much to say about the women characters because female barbarians usually wear the same things, but they're usually just a little bit more covered up, but they still have a lot of things showing, like their breasts or their arms or their thighs or legs, right? So if a female barbarian would ever to go like bare chested, quote unquote bare chested, it would be like they have some sort of like chest wrap, right? So there's not a lot of nudity, or they wear some sort of like chest armor where it has like a midriff where you can't you see like the belly button and things like that. Think such as Red Sonja in I think it was 1985. Please don't witch hunt me for the year, but the Red Sonja movie, I believe it was like 1985, 1986, something like that. I believe. Don't I don't know. But Bridget Nielsen, her Red Sonja rendition, she has that like chest armor, but you can still see, her stomach. It's sleeveless, right? You can see her legs. She has the same kind of like loincloth thing going on, but she has that type of stuff. And I think the main exception to this is the actual Red Sonja from the comics, and not Red Sonja Rogatina from the Robert E. Howard Swordswoman stories. But even Red Sonja gets a little bit of a design shakeup, right? She has like a sort of like pauldron. She has a belt. Sometimes she has a fur on her belt. Sometimes I think there was some contention with Red Sonja design at one point, I believe, and they were forced to like give her like a new type of armor or like clothing, and so she was like wearing some sort of like pants and shirt. They were like blue, but I've only seen a glimpse of it. I want to get into the Red Sonja comics. I just don't, haven't had the time. But if we go to Xena Warrior Princess, she has the same thing as Bridget Nielsen's rendition of Red Sonja. She wears the Warrior Princess bikini armor. It's black and it's got gold. It's no sleeves on. She's got like a kind of like a skirt going on, some sort of like mini skirt going on. She wears these big boots, right? So that's the kind of the designs most female warriors and barbarians kind of go for. If you're going for like the warrior princess, you kind of go in the way of Xena, where you're still showing a lot of stuff, but she's a little bit more covered up, right? But if you're going for like a female barbarian, right? Think of like Amathea from Barbarian Queen, or Lana Clarkson in the I think it was the Amazons movie, the Sword and Sorcery movie. I believe it's her. Uh, but you would go like, that route where you're showing a little bit more than the warrior princess trope. And I personally believe that the female character designs suffer more from the sameness of their clothing designs than uh the male barbarians, because the designers, the artists, the movie makers, etc., want them to be strong, as well as they want the female characters to be titillating to a varying degree of success, right? Contrary to, I think, what is a popular opinion to others in the sword and sorcery genre, I prefer the women to be a little bit more covered up, more armor and things like that. I don't really like the open designs of some of these women characters, because it's not very unique. It's not very like visually appealing, and there's an influx of these types of characters where, oh my god, it's a strong female barbarian, but all she's wearing is like a bikini, right? And it's like, I that's not realistic. I like realism in my unrealistic genre. You know what I mean? I want some type of grounding. Uh, what also really gets me is these women are also like very skinny. They are lacking any sort of muscle definition whatsoever, and they seemingly seem to overpower a lot of men that are, multiple dozens of pounds over the characters, right? And I think a perfect casting was Bridget Nielsen in Red Sonja, because she was fairly muscular and she stood at 6'1" at the time, I believe. She was beautiful, she was stunning, as much as she was strong, and she matched up to Arnold, aka Calidor, aka knockoff Conan in that film. Her design as Red Sonja was also nice. I don't really like the bikini armor. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really care for the bikini armor. But Bridget Nielsen and the movie director, I think was it Dino Laurentiis, or I don't know who the director was. It wasn't John Milius, I know that. Really, you know, the designers and the movie director, they really knocked it out of the park with Bridget Nielsen, her armor and her casting. And this type of contrast between the strong, a woman character, right? Usually in Sword of Sorcery, women are just like there for the male protagonist to be rescued, right? But I like these contrasts where you have like a strong female character, but she's actually strong. She's portrayed as strong. She has muscles, she has armor and things like that. And these type of contrasts are kind of how I designed my Conan Exile, my two Conan Exile original characters as well. I looked for things that weren't like well represented too much in the sword and sorcery genre, and I'd like to touch upon that in like another video, but this video's gone long enough, and I'll most likely just make a separate dude talk for that as well. But yeah, we're 20 minutes in, but there's a lot of things to discuss, because there's a lot of thought that goes into these, even for like the lowest effort castings and portrayals, right? So I thought this would be a pretty interesting content to talk about, because sword and sorcery is pretty much scarce and dead in the water. No one really talks about it. Besides the Conan comics coming out and the newest Red Sonja film with Matilda Lutz, which I have yet to watch. I heard it's not very good, but I will watch it. I also want to get like the DVD for it and things like that. But there just isn't much discussion for these types of things, and I'm a big fan, and I'd like to just talk about it, right? So, wrapping it up. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you wish to support my artwork and my videos, all my payment/tipping links are in my profile. More videos, more artwork, more dude talks will come regardless. Goodbye for now, guys.